Have you ever made a mistake that ruined your life? Or, have you ever done something good that cost you everything? On a rainy Tuesday in Chicago, Chloe Danvers did the right thing. She helped a confused, trembling old woman off the floor while the wealthiest people in the city laughed at them. They pointed fingers. They took photos. They called it pathetic. Chloe lost her job that night. She walked out into the rain with nothing but what nobody in that restaurant knew. Not the cruel manager, not the laughing customers, and certainly not Chloe, was that the homeless woman trembling on the floor held the keys to an empire, and the man coming to find her. He wasn't just a son. He was the one man who could buy and sell everyone in that room. This is the story of how a single act of kindness brought a kingdom to its knees. The Obsidian Lounge was not merely a restaurant, it was a filtration system for Chicago's elite. Located in the heart of the Gold Coast, it was the kind of place where the lighting was always dim, the jazz was live but unobtrusive, and a bottle of sparkling water cost more than the hourly minimum wage. For Chloe Danvers, the Obsidian was a battlefield. At 24, Chloe had the tired eyes of someone twice her age. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a bun so tight it gave her a headache by 6 p.m., a requirement of the strict dress code enforced by the floor manager, Gavin Reed. Table 12 needs a refill on the Pinot. Move, Danvers. You look like you're wading through molasses, Gavin snapped, checking his reflection in the polished brass of the espresso machine. Gavin Reed was a man constructed entirely of insecurity and hair gel. He wore Italian suits that didn't quite fit his shoulders and treated the staff like indentured servants. He was desperate to be seen as an equal by the billionaires who dined there, but to them, he was just help in a better suit. Yes, Gavin. Right away, Chloe said, her voice steady. She had learned long ago that fighting back only resulted in cut shifts, and Chloe couldn't afford to lose shifts. In her pocket, vibrating silently against her hip, was her phone. She knew exactly what the notification was, a reminder from St. Jude's medical billing. Her mother's dialysis treatments were racking up debt faster than Chloe could run plates of Wagyu beef. Every night, Chloe counted her tips in the bathroom stall, praying she made enough to keep the lights on in their cramped apartment in Rogers Park. The Tuesday night shift was supposed to be slow, but the rain had driven people inside. A torrential downpour was hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows, blurring the city lights into streaks of neon and grey. At table 4 sat the Taggarts. Blake and Courtney Taggart were regulars, the kind of old money couple that made new money nervous. Blake was a real estate mogul who owned half the skyline. Courtney was a socialite who treated service workers like NPCs in a video game. Background noise, barely human. "Excuse me," Courtney snapped, waving a manicured hand as Chloe walked by with the Pinot for table 12. Chloe paused, forcing the professional smile that made her jaw ache. "Yes, Mrs. Taggart. Is everything all right with the bisque?" "It's lukewarm," Courtney lied. The steam was clearly rising from the bowl. "And I specifically asked for the croutons on the side. Now it's soggy. Take it away." I apologize, Mrs. Taggart. I'll have the kitchen remake it immediately." "Don't just stand there," Blake Taggart added, not looking up from his phone. "Fix it, and tell Gavin to comp the drinks. This service is slipping." Chloe took the bowl, her knuckles white against the porcelain. As she walked back to the kitchen, she caught Gavin watching her. He dragged a thumb across his throat. Strike one. The kitchen was a chaotic symphony of shouting chefs and clanging pans, but for Chloe, it was a brief sanctuary from the sharks in the dining room. She scraped the perfectly good soup into the trash, her heart pounding. "Rough night?" asked Diego, the dishwasher, a kind man who had fled Venezuela 3 years prior. "The Taggarts," Chloe sighed, leaning against the stainless steel counter for a microsecond of rest. If I don't make 200 tonight, the electric company is going to cut us off on Friday. Keep your head up, Chica, Diego said softly. Karma watches, even here. Chloe didn't have the heart to tell him that in the Obsidian Lounge, the only karma that existed was the credit limit on an American Express black card. She picked up the fresh bowl, smoothed her apron, and prepared to go back out into the lion's den. She didn't know it yet, but the door was about to open, and the world was about to change. The heavy oak door of the Obsidian Lounge was designed to keep the elements out. It was manned by a bouncer named Eric, who usually did a good job of filtering the clientele. But Eric was currently distracted, flirting with a hostess near the cloakroom. The door swung open. A gust of wind and rain swept into the pristine foyer, bringing with it a smell of wet pavement and exhaust fumes that clashed violently with the scent of truffle oil and expensive perfume. Standing in the doorway was a figure that did not belong. She was small, perhaps in her 70s, wrapped in a soaked, oversized beige trench coat that looked 3 sizes too big. Her grey hair was plastered to her skull, dripping water onto the imported marble floor. She wore sneakers that were caked in mud. She clutched a plastic shopping bag in one hand, her knuckles gnarly with arthritis. She looked lost, disoriented. The ambient chatter of the restaurant didn't stop immediately. It rippled into silence, starting from the tables nearest the door and spreading outward like a contagion. Chloe was at table 4, placing the fresh soup down for Courtney Taggart. Finally, Courtney sneered. Then she looked up, her eyes widening in disgust. Oh my God, look! Chloe turned. The old woman took a step forward. She was shaking violently, likely from the freezing Chicago rain. She looked around the room, her eyes darting frantically, unable to focus on anything. "Help," she whispered, though her voice was too weak to carry over the jazz music. Gavin Reed materialized from the shadows near the bar. He moved with the speed of a predator. He didn't see a human being in distress. He saw a stain on his reputation. He saw a homeless person disturbing his wealthy ecosystem. "Excuse me," Gavin's voice boomed, projecting a fake authority. He marched toward the woman, snapping his fingers at the bouncer. "Eric, why is the door open? Get this person out of here immediately." The old woman flinched as Gavin approached. I just need to sit," she stammered. "Please, my chest." "This is a private establishment, madam," Gavin hissed, stopping 2 feet from her to avoid getting wet. "You are trespassing. Leave now, or I'm calling the police." At table 4, Blake Taggart let out a loud, barking laugh. "Careful, Gavin. She might attack you with her shopping bag. God, can't we eat in peace without the riffraff wandering in?" Courtney giggled, sipping her wine. "It's practically a zoo tonight. First the soup, now this." The laughter was the spark. It traveled around the room. The other diners, seeing the Taggarts laugh, joined in. It was a nervous, cruel laughter, the sound of a pack asserting its dominance over the weak. They weren't laughing because it was funny. They were laughing because they were uncomfortable and wanted the problem to disappear. I can't," the woman gasped. She took another step, her wet sneaker squeaking on the polished marble. And then, it happened. Her legs gave out. It wasn't a graceful fall. It was heavy and painful. She collapsed onto her side, her hip hitting the hard stone with a sickening thud. The plastic bag spilled open, revealing nothing but old newspapers and a blue woolen scarf. The restaurant went silent for a heartbeat. Then, someone at the bar, a young stockbroker in a pinstripe suit, yelled out, "Check, please! I think she's drunk." The laughter returned, louder this time. Gavin stood over her, hands on his hips, looking down with pure contempt. Unbelievable. Eric, drag her out, now, before she vomits on the floor. Chloe felt a cold spike of adrenaline pierce her chest. She looked at the Taggarts, who were filming the scene on their iPhones. She looked at Gavin, who was sneering. She looked at the woman, who was curled in a fetal position, shivering, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "Don't do it," a voice in Chloe's head warned. "You need this job. You need the money for Mum. Stay at your station." Chloe looked at the woman again. She saw her own mother in those terrified eyes. "No," Chloe whispered. She dropped the silver serving tray she was holding. It hit the floor with a deafening clang that silenced the room. Chloe ran. She didn't walk. She sprinted across the dining room, ignoring the gasps of the patrons. She slid on her knees onto the hard marble, skidding to a halt right beside the fallen woman. "Don't touch her, Danvers!" Gavin roared, his face turning a mottled red. "You are on the clock. Get back to your section." Chloe ignored him. She reached out, her hands gentle but firm. "Mum? Mum, can you hear me? I'm Chloe. I'm going to help you." The woman's eyes were unfocused, milky with cataracts, or perhaps shock. She was freezing cold to the touch. My son," she wheezed. "I lost my son." "It's okay," Chloe soothed, unbuttoning her own uniform vest, part of the mandatory obsidian livery, and wrapping it around the woman's shoulders. "We're going to find him. But first, we need to get you warm." "Chloe." Gavin was standing right over them now. He lowered his voice to a venomous whisper. "If you do not get up this second, you are done. Fired. Blacklisted. Do you hear me? I will make sure you never wait tables in this city again." Chloe looked up. For the first time in 2 years, she didn't see Gavin as a figure of authority. She saw a small, sad man. "She's having a medical episode, Gavin," Chloe said, her voice ringing clear through the silent restaurant. "She's not drunk. She's hypothermic. Look at her lips, they're blue." "I don't care if she's dying," Gavin spat, then realized he had said it too loud. He quickly corrected himself for the audience. "I mean, we are not paramedics. You are exposing the restaurant to liability. Eric, remove them both." "No," Chloe said firmly. She turned to the busboy, a teenager named Leo, who was watching with wide eyes. "Leo, get me a glass of warm water and a clean tablecloth. Now." Leo hesitated, looking at Gavin, then at Chloe. He ran to the kitchen. "You defy me!" Gavin looked like he was about to explode. "She's a human being!" Chloe shouted back, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "Does that mean nothing to you people?" She looked around the room. The Taggarts had stopped filming, looking slightly embarrassed but mostly annoyed. The stockbroker was avoiding eye contact. "Pathetic," Blake Taggart muttered, loud enough to be heard. "Bleeding heart liberals ruining dinner." Leo returned with the tablecloth and water. Chloe ignored the insults. She gently dabbed the mud from the woman's face. She lifted the woman's head and helped her sip the water. Thank you," the woman whispered, her hand clutching Chloe's wrist with surprising strength. You have a kind light." "Just breathe," Chloe whispered. "I've got you." The woman closed her eyes, her breathing steadying slightly. She reached into the pocket of her sodden coat and pulled out a small, wet object. It was a business card, but it was ruined, soaked through with rain. The ink had bled into an unintelligible smear. "Call!" she gasped. "Call him." Chloe took the mushy card. It was useless. There were no numbers visible. "It's okay," Chloe said. "We'll call an ambulance." "No!" The woman panicked, trying to sit up. "No ambulance, just rest, please." Chloe hesitated. An ambulance cost money. Something she knew too well. Maybe the woman was terrified of the bill. "Get her out!" Gavin screamed, losing all composure. "Danvers, you are fired! Get your things and get this trash out of my restaurant!" Chloe looked at the woman, then at Gavin. She stood up, her knees aching. She helped the old woman to her feet. The woman leaned heavily on Chloe, frail as a bird. "I'm leaving," Chloe said, her voice trembling with rage. "And don't worry, Gavin. I wouldn't want to work for a man without a soul anyway." "Get out!" Gavin pointed to the door. The walk to the door felt like a funeral procession. Chloe, supporting the wet, shivering stranger, walked past the tables of the elite. Nobody offered to help. Nobody offered a coat. Courtney Taggart actually pulled her purse closer as they passed, as if afraid the old woman would snatch it. They stepped out into the cold, driving rain of Chicago. The heavy door of the Obsidian Lounge slammed shut behind them, sealing off the warmth and the light, leaving Chloe Danvers unemployed, shivering, and supporting a total stranger on a dark street corner. "I'm so sorry," Chloe said to the woman, wiping rain from her eyes. "I don't have a car, but there's a bus stop up the block. We can go to a diner. I have $20. The woman looked at Chloe. The confusion in her eyes seemed to clear for a fleeting second. She looked at the closed door of the restaurant, then at Chloe's name tag, which she was still wearing. "Chloe," the woman tested the name. "You lost your job?" "It's fine," Chloe lied, her stomach twisting into knots. "I hated it." I am Martha," the woman said. "Nice to meet you, Martha. Come on, let's get out of the rain." Chloe didn't know that, inside the restaurant, the trash she had just escorted out had left something behind. Under the table where Martha had fallen, unnoticed by the staff who were frantically scrubbing the floor with disinfectant, lay a small, heavy object. It wasn't a piece of trash. It was a bracelet. Platinum links, encrusted with yellow diamonds, inscribed on the inside with a single word. Caldwell, and 3 blocks away, a convoy of 3 black Cadillac Escalades was tearing through traffic, running red lights. Inside the lead vehicle, a man was screaming into a phone, his voice laced with the kind of power that could level city blocks. "I don't care what the GPS says. Find her! If my mother spends 1 more minute in this rain, I will burn this entire city to the ground." The Starlight Diner was 5 blocks away from the Obsidian Lounge, but in terms of social strata, it was in a different galaxy. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a dying hum. The linoleum floor was peeling at the corners, and the smell of burnt coffee and bacon grease hung heavy in the air. It was heaven. Chloe guided Martha into a red vinyl booth at the back. The diner was mostly empty, save for a trucker asleep over a plate of fries and a tired waitress named Barb, who looked up as the bell jingled. "Rough night, sugar?" Barb asked, eyeing Chloe's soaked uniform and the trembling old woman. "The roughest." Chloe managed a weak smile. "Can we get 2 coffees? Decaf for her. And maybe a grilled cheese. To share." Chloe mentally calculated. She had $22 in cash. The bus ride home was $3. The coffee would be $4. The sandwich, $8. She would have $7 left to her name until her final paycheck arrived, if Gavin even decided to process it. "Coming right up," Barb said, not writing anything down. Martha was shivering less now. She sat wrapped in Chloe's vest, staring at the Formica table surface as if it were a map of the world. "You are very kind," Martha said. Her voice was stronger now, more patrician than Chloe had noticed before. Even in her confusion, she had a certain cadence to her speech, a rhythm of someone who was used to being listened to. "It's just a sandwich, Martha," Chloe said, rubbing her hands together to warm them. "I couldn't leave you there." "They laughed," Martha whispered, a tear leaking from her eye. "Why did they laugh?" The question broke Chloe's heart. Because they're broken, Martha. People like that. They have money, but they're empty inside. They think being cruel makes them strong. Martha reached out and touched Chloe's hand. Her fingers were wrinkled but manicured, a detail Chloe finally noticed. Her nails were perfect, coated in a subtle, clear polish. Strange, Chloe thought. Homeless women usually don't have professional manicures. But she dismissed it. Maybe Martha had fallen on hard times recently. "My son," Martha started again, her brow furrowing in frustration. He gets angry when I wander off. I saw the lights, the pretty lights in the window. I wanted to see the jazz. I used to sing jazz, you know?" "You did?" Chloe smiled, leaning in. "Before the towers," Martha murmured. "Before the business. He built the towers. He says, 'Mother, stay in the penthouse. It's safe.' But it's a cage, Chloe. A golden cage." Chloe nodded sympathetically, assuming the towers and the penthouse were delusions of a mind grappling with dementia. "Well, you're safe here. We'll finish eating, and then we'll figure out who to call. Do you remember your last name, Martha?" Martha frowned. She squeezed her eyes shut. "Cold. Cold. Something cold." "It's okay, don't force it." Barb dropped the plates on the table. The grilled cheese was greasy and hot. Chloe tore it in half, giving the bigger half to Martha. "Eat," Chloe commanded gently. As Martha ate with the hunger of someone who hadn't eaten all day, Chloe's phone buzzed again. Another text. "Landlord. Rent is 3 days late, Chloe. I'm not running a charity. Pay by Friday or I start the eviction process." Chloe stared at the screen, her vision blurring. She had just thrown away her only source of income to save a stranger. She looked at Martha, who was happily dipping the sandwich into a ketchup packet, humming a soft tune. Was it worth it? Chloe asked herself. Was it worth losing everything? She looked at the old woman's smile, a genuine human smile in a night of cruelty. Yes, Chloe decided. It was. But she had no idea that while she was sharing a $5 sandwich, the most powerful security force in Chicago was tearing the city apart, looking for the woman sitting across from her. The black Cadillac Escalade didn't park. It mounted the curb. The tires screeched against the wet pavement directly in front of the Obsidian Lounge. Before the vehicle even came to a complete halt, the back door flew open. Ethan Caldwell stepped out. To call Ethan Caldwell a billionaire was an understatement. He was an institution. At 32, he was the CEO of Caldwell Dynamics, a conglomerate that owned everything from shipping logistics to the very fiber-optic cables that ran the internet in the Midwest. He was 6'2", with sharp, angular features and eyes the color of jagged steel. He wore a bespoke charcoal suit that cost more than Gavin Reed's entire yearly salary. Usually, Ethan was a man of ice, controlled, calculated. Tonight, he was fire. "Signal died here," a burly man in a tactical earpiece said, jumping out of the front seat. This was Silas, Ethan's head of security. Her tracker watch must have been damaged or removed. The last ping was 10 minutes ago. Inside. Ethan didn't speak. He strode toward the heavy oak door of the Obsidian. Eric the bouncer saw him coming. Eric was a big man, used to intimidating drunks. But seeing Ethan Caldwell marching toward him was like watching a tsunami approach. You didn't fight it. You ran. "Sir, we're at capacity," Eric started, purely out of habit. Ethan didn't even slow down. He shoved the door open with such force that it hit the interior wall with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. The Obsidian Lounge was still buzzing with the low murmur of wealthy diners. The jazz band was playing a soft saxophone melody. The Taggarts were arguably still complaining about the soup. Then, the atmosphere shifted. It was a primal shift. The air seemed to get heavier. Heads turned, the jazz band faltered and stopped. Ethan stood in the foyer, dripping wet, his chest heaving. His eyes scanned the room, analyzing every face in a millisecond. Silas and 2 other security guards flanked him, looking ready for war. Gavin Reed, who was currently berating a busboy near the bar, looked up. He adjusted his tie, annoyed at the intrusion, not immediately recognizing the man. "Excuse me," Gavin shouted, marching over. "You can't just barge in here. This is a private—" Gavin stopped. He froze. He recognized the face. He had seen it on the cover of Forbes, on the news, on the terrifying rumors whispered in high society circles. Mr. Caldwell." Gavin's voice squeaked, dropping an octave. Ethan ignored him. He looked around the room. "Where is she?" His voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. It was a command. "Where is who, sir?" Gavin stammered, sweat instantly beading on his forehead. We would be honored to seat you. I can clear the best table." Ethan grabbed Gavin by the lapels of his cheap suit and slammed him against the mahogany host stand. A collective gasp went through the room. Blake Taggart dropped his fork. "My mother," Ethan snarled, his face inches from Gavin's. Martha Caldwell. Small, 72. Wearing a beige trench coat. Confused. She was here. The GPS said she was here. Gavin's eyes went wide. His stomach dropped through the floor. The color drained from his face so fast, he looked like a corpse. The homeless woman. The realization hit Gavin like a freight train. The trash he had ordered to be dragged out. The drunk everyone had laughed at. I, Gavin stuttered, unable to form words. "Speak!" Ethan roared, shaking him. There was a woman," Gavin whispered, trembling. "But she looked. She was causing a disturbance. We didn't know. She looked like a beggar." Ethan released Gavin, shoving him backward. Gavin stumbled and fell, knocking over a vase of lilies. "You threw her out?" Ethan asked, his voice deadly quiet. "In this storm?" She fell," Gavin babbled, trying to defend himself as the diners watched in horror. "She was wet and dirty. We have standards, Mr. Caldwell. We have a reputation." "Your reputation?" Ethan laughed, a cold, terrifying sound. "You threw a 70-year-old woman with Alzheimer's into the freezing rain because she ruined your aesthetic? I had to." Gavin pointed a shaking finger at the door. "But the waitress, Danvers, she took her. It was Danvers' fault. She dragged her out." Ethan turned to Silas. "Find the waitress. Find my mother. Now." "Sir," Silas barked into his radio. "Grid search. 3-block radius. Look for a waitress in uniform and the VIP." Ethan turned back to the dining room, his eyes locked onto table 4. He saw Blake and Courtney Taggart. He walked slowly towards them. Blake Taggart, a man who usually bullied contractors for sport, shrank into his chair. "You," Ethan said, pointing at the phone sitting on the table. "You were filming." No, Blake stammered. "Give it to me." Blake handed the phone over with a shaking hand. Ethan unlocked it. The password was 1234, pathetic, and played the last video. On the screen, Ethan watched the footage. He saw his mother, his frail, sweet mother, who had raised him alone after his father died, shaking on the floor. He heard the laughter. He heard Courtney's giggle. He heard the stockbroker yell, "Check, please!" And then he saw the blonde waitress. He saw her drop the tray. He saw her kneel. He saw her wrap her vest around his mother. He heard her voice. "She's a human being." Ethan watched the waitress help his mother up and lead her out, while Gavin screamed at her to get out. Ethan looked up from the screen. He looked at Blake Taggart. "You laughed," Ethan said softly. It was a misunderstanding," Blake said, sweating. "She looked—" Ethan smashed the phone onto the table. The screen shattered into 1,000 diamonds of glass. "Silas," Ethan said, not looking back. "By the building." The room went dead silent. "Sir?" Silas asked from the doorway. "This building," Ethan said, buttoning his suit jacket. "Buy it. Tonight. I want the lease, the land, the brick, the mortar. I want to own the ground these people are standing on." "Consider it done, sir." Ethan looked at Gavin, who was still on the floor. "And fire him. Fire everyone. Close this place down. Now." "You can't do that!" Gavin shrieked. "This is a business!" "It was a business," Ethan corrected. "Now it's mine, and I'm closing it." He turned to the diners. "Get out, all of you. You have 5 minutes before I have you arrested for trespassing on my property." It was pandemonium. People scrambled for their coats. Food was left uneaten. Wine was spilled. The elite of Chicago fled like rats from a sinking ship. Ethan didn't watch them go. He walked to the spot where his mother had fallen. He crouched down. There, half hidden under the leg of a chair, something sparkled. He picked it up. The platinum bracelet. Caldwell. He clutched it in his fist until it hurt. "Find her, Silas," Ethan whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "If anything has happened to her, if she's hurt—" "We have a hit on a credit card transaction," Silas said, pressing his earpiece. "A small transaction, 7 minutes ago. A diner called the Starlight, 5 blocks east." Ethan was already running for the door. The Starlight diner was quiet. Chloe and Martha were finishing their coffees. "You have a nice smile," Martha said, tracing the rim of her mug. "Like my son. He doesn't smile enough. He works too hard. He thinks money fixes things. But money is just paper. It doesn't hug you back." Chloe nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "My mum is sick," she confessed, the weight of the night finally spilling over. I worked so hard to pay for her doctors, but it's never enough. And now what?" Martha asked. "Now I don't have a job," Chloe said, looking down. "I don't know how I'm going to pay the rent this week. But I'm glad I was there for you, Martha. I really am. Nobody should be alone in the dark." Martha stared at her. For a moment, the fog in her eyes seemed to lift completely. She looked at Chloe, not as a confused old woman, but as a matriarch. "You won't be alone, Chloe," Martha said firmly. "I promise." Before Chloe could ask what she meant, the diner door burst open. It wasn't the gentle jingle of the bell. It was a slam. Barb, the waitress, dropped a pot of coffee. Ethan Caldwell stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his hair, his chest heaving. Behind him, 3 large men in suits filled the entrance. Chloe gasped, instinctively sliding in front of Martha to protect her. She thought they were police, or maybe Gavin had sent thugs to scare her. "Get back!" Chloe shouted, grabbing a butter knife from the table. It was a ridiculous weapon, but she held it like Excalibur. "Leave her alone!" Ethan stopped. He looked at the waitress, so small, wet, tired, holding a butter knife against 4 large men. Then he looked behind her. "Mother?" Ethan whispered. Martha peered around Chloe's shoulder. Her face lit up. "Ethan!" she exclaimed, as if he had just come home from school. "Look, I made a new friend. She bought me a grilled cheese." Ethan let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He walked past Chloe, ignoring the knife, and fell to his knees beside the booth. He buried his face in his mother's hands. "I thought I lost you," he choked out. "I thought, God, Mum, you can't do that. You can't just leave the house." "I wanted to hear the jazz," Martha said simply, patting his wet hair. "But the people were mean, Ethan. They were very mean, except Chloe." Ethan lifted his head. He looked at Chloe. Chloe was still standing there, holding the butter knife, completely stunned. She recognized him now. Everyone knew Ethan Caldwell's face. "You," Chloe whispered. "She's your mother?" Ethan stood up. He towered over Chloe, but his body language wasn't threatening anymore. It was humbled. He saw the wet uniform, the name tag Chloe, the Starlight Diner receipt on the table that showed a total of $12.50, paid in cash. He looked at the sandwich crusts. He realized this waitress, who likely made minimum wage, had spent her own money to feed his mother, while the billionaires at the Obsidian had laughed. Ethan Caldwell, a man who could buy countries, felt a lump in his throat. "You saved her," Ethan said. His voice was thick. I just gave her a hand," Chloe said, putting the knife down, her hands shaking. She was cold. "You have no idea what you did," Ethan said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. But this wasn't a business card. It was a heavy, black metal card. "Silas," Ethan said without looking away from Chloe. "Sir, get the car. We're taking my mother home. And Chloe—" Ethan paused. "You're coming with us." "What?" "No." Chloe backed away. "I have to go home. My mom." "Your mother is coming too," Ethan said. "Where is she?" She's at home. She's on dialysis. I can't leave her." "Then we will get her," Ethan said. "Silas, call Dr. Arrington at Northwestern Memorial. Tell him to prep the VIP suite. Tell him I'm bringing a patient. Top priority." "Wait, I can't pay for that," Chloe panicked. "I just lost my job. I have $18. Ethan stepped closer. He took Chloe's hands in his. His hands were warm and strong. "Chloe," he said, looking deep into her eyes, "you don't have a job anymore because you lost it, saving the most important person in my world. You think I'm going to let you worry about money ever again? I don't understand." "You spent your last dollar on her," Ethan said, gesturing to Martha. "Now, I'm going to spend mine on you." He turned to his mother. "Ready to go, Mom?" "Can Chloe come?" Martha asked. "She needs a ride. It's raining." Ethan smiled, a genuine, dazzling smile that transformed his face. "Yes, Mom. Chloe is coming. Chloe is family now." The silence in the VIP wing of Northwestern Memorial Hospital was different from the silence Chloe Danvers was used to. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of her cramped apartment when the electricity was cut off. It was a soft, expensive silence, the kind that smelled of fresh lilies and sanitized hope. 3 days had passed since the incident at the Obsidian Lounge. Outside, Chicago was finally drying out under a tentative sun. But inside Suite 401, Chloe felt like she was still floating in a dream she was terrified to wake up from. She sat in a high-backed leather recliner, her feet tucked under her, watching her mother sleep. For 2 years, Chloe had watched her mother, Sarah, deteriorate. The kidney disease had turned Sarah's skin a sallow grey, etched deep lines of pain around her eyes, and stolen her laughter. But today, the colour was returning. The dialysis machine next to the bed wasn't the ancient, clunky model from the public clinic that beeped incessantly. It was a sleek, silent monolith of modern technology. The door handle turned with a soft click. Dr. Arrington, the chief of nephrology, a man Chloe had previously only seen on hospital donor plaques, stepped in. He held a clipboard, looking not at the charts, but at Chloe, with a look of professional awe. "Miss Danvers," he said softly, closing the door behind him. "I have the results from the donor compatibility cross-match." Chloe stood up, her heart hammering against her ribs. Is it bad news?" "On the contrary," Dr. Arrington smiled. "We usually wait months, sometimes years, for a match this precise. But Mr. Caldwell had his team run a nationwide search through private channels. We found a match in Ohio. The kidney is being flown in tonight." We operate tomorrow morning." Chloe's legs gave out. She sank back into the chair, covering her face with her hands. "Tomorrow? But the cost." "Doctor, I haven't even received the bill for the room yet. A transplant, the anti-rejection meds, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. I have $18 in my bank account." "The account is flagged. Caldwell Private, Chloe," the doctor said gently. "Mr. Caldwell has established a medical trust in your mother's name. It covers the surgery, the recovery, and 5 years of post-op care. You will never see a bill." Chloe sobbed. It was a raw, guttural sound of relief that she had been holding back for 24 months. The weight of the world, which had been crushing her spine, simply vanished. She didn't hear the door open again. She didn't realize she wasn't alone until a warm, firm hand touched her shoulder. "Breathe, Chloe." She looked up through her tears to see Ethan Caldwell. He looked different than the terrified son in the rain or the vengeful titan in the restaurant. He was wearing a soft navy sweater and jeans. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear. "You did this," Chloe whispered, standing up to face him. "Ethan, I can't. I don't know how to repay you. I can't ever repay you." "Repay me?" Ethan let out a dry, incredulous laugh. He walked to the window, looking out over the skyline he essentially owned. "Chloe, do you know what the doctors told me about my mother?" Chloe shook her head, wiping her eyes. "They said her core temperature was 89 degrees when we got her into the car. If she had been on that cold floor for 10 more minutes, or if she had walked to the bus stop alone." He paused, his voice cracking. "I have billions of dollars, Chloe. I have armies of lawyers and security guards, but none of that could save her. Only you could. You bought me time. You bought me my mother back. There is no price tag on that." "She's a sweet woman," Chloe said softly. "She told me about the jazz." Ethan turned, a faint smile playing on his lips. "That's actually why I'm here. I need to show you something. My driver is downstairs. Sarah is in good hands with the nurses. Will you come with me?" The drive through the Gold Coast was silent. Chloe sat in the back of the Bentley, watching the city roll by. When the car slowed down, her stomach tightened. They were back. The Obsidian Lounge. The building looked ominous in the daylight. The windows were dark. A crude paper sign taped to the glass read, "Closed for renovations." "Why are we here?" Chloe asked, her voice trembling slightly. The memory of Gavin screaming and the Taggart's laughter was still fresh. "Because I need to exorcise a ghost," Ethan said. "And I need your help to do it." He opened the door for her, the heavy oak door that she had been thrown out of just 72 hours ago, was now unlocked. They stepped inside. The restaurant was a tomb. The tables were still set with white linens, now gathering a fine layer of dust. The vase of lilies that Gavin had knocked over was still on the floor. The flowers dead and brown. The air smelled of stale wine and abandonment. 40 years ago, Ethan's voice echoed in the empty cavern. This wasn't a pretension factory. It was a jazz club called the Blue Note. My father proposed to my mother right there. He pointed to the spot where table 4, the Taggart's table, sat. That's why she came back, Chloe realized. She wasn't just wandering. She was looking for him. She was looking for the music, Ethan corrected. She told me that when she walked in, she expected warmth. She expected soul. Instead, she found this. He gestured disdainfully at the gold leaf molding and the velvet ropes. She found a place that excludes people to make them feel important. Ethan walked over to the bar, where Gavin used to hold court. He ran a finger along the mahogany. I destroyed them, you know, Ethan said calmly. Who? Gavin, The Taggarts, the others. Chloe moved closer. What did you do? Gavin Reed will never work in hospitality in this hemisphere again. I made a few phone calls. His reputation is ash. As for the Taggarts, Ethan pulled out his phone and tapped the screen, handing it to Chloe. It was a news article from the Chicago Tribune. Real estate mogul Blake Taggart ousted by board amidst viral bullying scandal. A video surfaced, Ethan explained. Someone at the bar recorded everything. The internet is a cruel judge, Chloe, but occasionally it is a just one. The Taggarts are social pariahs. They've lost their investors, their country club memberships, and their dignity. They are currently hiding in a rental house in the Hamptons. Chloe looked at the phone, then at Ethan. I didn't want revenge, Ethan. I just wanted them to be kind. They aren't capable of kindness, Ethan said, taking the phone back. But you are. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a heavy set of brass keys. He took Chloe's hand, turning her palm up, and pressed the cold metal into her skin. I bought the building, Chloe. The land, the bricks, the wine cellar, everything. Okay, Chloe said, confused. So you're going to turn it into offices? No, I'm giving it to you. Chloe froze. She stared at the keys. What? I want you to open a restaurant, Ethan said, his eyes intense and unblinking. Not the obsidian. Something real. Something with the spirit of the Blue Note. I've set up an operating account with $2 million in seed money. The building is rent-free, forever. Ethan, stop. Chloe backed away, shaking her head. I'm a waitress. I take orders. I don't give them. I can't run a business. I dropped out of college to pay for dialysis. I'm not one of you. Exactly, Ethan said, stepping into her space. That is exactly why you have to do it. If I give this to a restaurateur, they'll turn it into another overpriced trap. But you felt the pain of being thrown out of here. You know what it feels like to be hungry. He placed his hands on her shoulders. I have one condition, Chloe. Only one. What? She whispered. You never turn anyone away. If they can pay $100 for a steak, fine. If they have nothing but lint in their pockets, they eat for free. You feed the body, and you feed the soul. Can you do that? Chloe looked around the silent, dark room. She imagined it, not as it was, but as it could be. She saw the velvet ropes gone. She saw warm light. She heard jazz. She saw her mother, healthy, sitting at a table. She saw Martha laughing. She closed her hand around the keys. I'll call it Martha's, she said. Ethan smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes completely. Perfect. 6 months later. The transformation was miraculous, not because of magic, but because of work. Chloe Danvers worked harder than she ever had as a waitress, but this was a different kind of exhaustion. It was the exhaustion of creation. She hired a chef, a woman named Maria, who had been working in a school cafeteria, because no high-end kitchen would hire a woman in her 50s. She hired busboys from the local youth shelter. She hired a jazz quartet, led by an old saxophone player who had actually played at the Blue Note in the 80s. On the night of the grand opening, the rain returned to Chicago. But this time, the rain didn't drive people away. It seemed to herd them in. The neon sign above the door buzzed with a warm, inviting amber light. Martha's table. There was no bouncer at the door. There was just a sign that read, "Come in out of the rain." Chloe stood by the kitchen pass, smoothing down the lapels of her charcoal blazer. She watched the room. It was packed. At one table sat the mayor of Chicago. At the table right next to him sat a family of 4 who Chloe knew from the neighborhood shelter. They were eating pot roast with the same dignity as the politician eating his filet mignon. "Order up, boss," Maria shouted, sliding plates onto the pass. "Looking good, Maria," Chloe beamed. She walked out onto the floor, pouring wine, shaking hands, checking on guests. The air was thick with the smell of roasting garlic, rosemary, and old books. The jazz band was playing a low, sultry rendition of Summertime. In the center booth, the best seat in the house, sat Martha Caldwell. She looked regal in a navy silk dress, a pearl necklace resting against her collarbone. Opposite her sat Ethan. Ethan wasn't looking at the food. He was watching Chloe. As she approached the table, he stood up. "It's extraordinary," Ethan said, his voice low so only she could hear. "You did it." "We did it," Chloe corrected. She looked at Martha. "How is the soup, Martha?" Martha looked up, her eyes sharp and clear. "It's hot, my dear, and nobody shouted at me." She winked. "And I believe I hear a saxophone." "Just for you," Chloe said, squeezing her hand. A tap on her shoulder interrupted them. It was Leo, the young bus boy she had retained from the old Obsidian staff, the only one who had tried to help that night. "Chloe?" Leo looked nervous. There's a guy at the back alley door. He won't leave. He says he knows you." Chloe's expression tightened. She exchanged a glance with Ethan. "I'll handle it." "I'm coming with you," Ethan said, stepping forward protectively. "No." Chloe put a hand on his chest. "I need to do this. Stay with Martha." Chloe walked through the bustling kitchen, past the steam and the noise, to the heavy steel security door at the back. She took a breath and pushed it open. The alley was dark, smelling of wet pavement and ozone. The rain was falling hard. Standing under the small awning, shivering in a thin, waterlogged jacket, was Gavin Reed. He looked 10 years older. His hair was unwashed, his cheeks sunken. The arrogance that had defined his posture was gone, replaced by a slump of defeat. He held a plastic bag of clothes. He looked up as the door opened. When he saw Chloe, dressed in a tailored suit, radiating authority and health, he flinched. "Chloe," he croaked. His voice was raspy. "Gavin," she said evenly. She didn't feel the anger she thought she would. She felt a profound, distant pity. I heard you were hiring," Gavin stammered, rainwater dripping from his nose. I know we had our differences. But I can't get a job, Chloe. They blacklisted me. I have nowhere to go. I haven't eaten since yesterday." The irony hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The man who had thrown an old woman out for ruining the aesthetic was now begging at the back door. Chloe looked at him. She thought about the cruelty. She thought about how he had made her feel small for years. A part of her, the part that remembered the fear of eviction, wanted to scream at him, wanted to tell him to get lost, to tell him that karma was a bitch. But then she heard the music drifting from inside. Martha's table. If I turn him away, Chloe thought, I become him. "We aren't hiring, Gavin," Chloe said firmly. "I can't trust you with my staff or my customers. You don't have the heart for this house." Gavin's shoulders dropped. He turned to walk back into the rain. "Right, I figured. Worth a shot." "Wait," Chloe said. Gavin stopped. "You can't work here," Chloe said. "But the sign out front says nobody goes hungry." She stepped back into the kitchen. She grabbed a to-go box, filling it with hot pot roast, mashed potatoes and fresh bread. She grabbed a bottle of water and a hot coffee. She walked back out and handed the bag to Gavin. The heat from the food radiated into his cold hands. "Eat," she said. "And there is a shelter on 4th Street called St. Jude's. I sit on the board now. Go there tomorrow at 9 a.m. Ask for Father John. Tell him Chloe sent you. They have a program for job placement in sanitation. It's hard work, Gavin. dirty work, but it's a paycheck." Gavin stared at the bag, then at Chloe. His eyes welled up. He looked like he wanted to say thank you, but the words were stuck in a throat unused to humility. He simply nodded, a jerky, broken motion. "Thank you," he whispered. "Go," Chloe said gently. She closed the door on the rain and the past. She turned back to the warmth of her kitchen. When she returned to the dining room, Ethan was waiting for her by the bar. He studied her face. "Was it him?" Ethan asked. "Yes." "Did you kick him out?" "I fed him," Chloe said, picking up a menu to organize the host stand. "And I sent him to a shelter." Ethan stared at her for a long moment. The noise of the restaurant seemed to fade away for him, leaving only her. He walked over, disregarding the crowded room, and took her hands in his. "You are incredible," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I watched you tonight, Chloe. You didn't just build a restaurant. You built a sanctuary. You took the ugliest night of my life and turned it into something beautiful." "I had help," she smiled, looking up at him. "A billionaire with a guilty conscience helped a little." "It's not guilt anymore," Ethan said. He moved closer, the space between them charged with an electricity that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "It's awe. I spent my whole life building towers, trying to get away from the ground. But you keep your feet on the ground and pull everyone else up." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles, rough from years of hard work, now holding the keys to her own kingdom. "My mother was right," Ethan whispered against her skin. "About what?" "She said you had a light. I didn't see it at first because it was so dark in here. But now, it's the only thing I see." Chloe felt a blush rise to her cheeks, but she didn't pull away. "So what happens now, Mr. Caldwell?" "Now?" Ethan smiled, and he gestured to the dining room, where the staff was laughing, the guests were eating, and Martha was humming along to the saxophone. "Now we eat, we listen to the jazz, and tomorrow, we change the world a little bit more." Chloe Danvers, the billionaire's favorite waitress, looked out over her domain. She saw the Taggart's empty table, now filled with a family celebrating a birthday. She saw the spot where she had fallen to her knees in the rain, now covered by a warm Persian rug. She squeezed Ethan's hand. "Sounds like a plan," she said. And outside, the rain finally stopped, leaving the streets of Chicago washed clean, shining under the streetlights like a brand new world. In a world obsessed with status, Chloe Danvers proved that the most valuable currency isn't Bitcoin or gold. It's kindness. She lost a minimum wage job, but gained a family, a fortune, and a purpose. The people who laughed at her lost everything that mattered, proving that while arrogance makes a lot of noise, humility writes the history books. Chloe and Ethan's story reminds us that every person we meet is fighting a battle we know nothing about. The homeless woman could be a matriarch. The waitress could be a future CEO. So the next time you see someone fall, don't point a camera. Extend a hand. You never know whose life you're about to change, including your own. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps us share more stories like this. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. What would you have done in Chloe's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.